In Afghanistan's mountains, the landscape is both shield and sword. For centuries, these peaks have shaped a people defined by resilience and fierce independence. Outsiders see only rock and ice, but for those who belong, the land is a teacher of patience and survival. Empires have broken themselves against these stones, learning too late that the terrain favors the defender. The land rewards those who know its secrets. Into this crucible came a young outsider, Osama bin Laden. The mountains became his university, teaching him logistics and the power of ideology. The wilderness shaped him, as it had shaped generations before. The stage was set for a conflict that would echo far beyond these peaks. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, unleashing a storm that would reshape the world. Tanks rolled into Kabul, helicopters thundered through mountain passes. For Afghans, it was an occupation by a foreign, atheist power. The invasion electrified the Muslim world. Calls for jihad echoed from Cairo to Jakarta. Among those moved was Osama bin Laden, a wealthy Saudi, searching for purpose. He left his life of privilege to support the resistance, using his resources and connections. The Red Bear's arrival transformed him, setting him on a path from business to war. The Soviet invasion was the spark. Bin Laden would help fan it into a global fire. The world would soon feel the consequences. In the border towns of Pakistan, chaos reigned. Millions of Afghan refugees and a new breed of foreign volunteers, the Afghan Arabs. They came from across the Muslim world, drawn by the call to jihad. But passion alone could not sustain a war. They needed organization. Osama bin Laden found his role, not as a fighter, but as the vital link between wealth and warfare. He co-founded Maktab al-Khidamat, the services office, with Abdullah Azam. This network provided food, shelter and funds, channeling resources to the Mujahideen. Bin Laden's checkbook and reputation opened doors, earning him respect among commanders. He brought cash, equipment and promises of support, forging alliances through humility and generosity. More than a financier, he became a brother in arms, sharing hardship and building trust. Under Azam's influence, bin Laden's vision expanded. Afghanistan was just the beginning. The services office became the nucleus of a global movement. Bin Laden was building more than a supply chain. He was building a brotherhood. The mountains were his classroom and faith his currency. The seeds of a militant network were sown in the dust of the borderlands. Soon, these seeds would take root far beyond Afghanistan. Afghanistan's mountains taught bin Laden and his followers the art of asymmetric warfare. Survival was lesson 1. Move at night, use caves, endure extremes. Ambush was lesson 2. A handful of fighters could devastate convoys from the high ground. The Soviets' reliance on roads became their undoing. Decentralization was lesson 3. The resistance thrived as a loose network, impossible to decapitate. Bin Laden saw the power of small autonomous cells, resilient, adaptable and hard to destroy. Unity, however fragile, was forged by shared faith, not nationality. The Afghan Arabs from dozens of countries became a single force under the banner of jihad. Bin Laden learned that ideology could unite and motivate beyond borders. Faith, not patriotism, was the glue. These lessons, survival, ambush, decentralization, unity, became the blueprint for his future strategy. The mountains shaped not just tactics, but a vision for global insurgency. The world would soon see the results. As the war dragged on, bin Laden's role evolved from financier to leader. He established his own training camps, molding fighters with discipline and ideology. The Lion's Den, his mountain base, became a prototype for something bigger. Bin Laden envisioned a network like the Afghan, resistance decentralized, resilient, global. In 1988, as the Soviets prepared to withdraw, he and his circle founded Al-Qaeda, the base. It was both a database of volunteers and a foundation for future jihad. Al-Qaeda's structure mirrored the lessons of Afghanistan, a central council for strategy, autonomous cells for action. Each cell was self-financing, adapting tactics to local conditions. This model made al-Qaeda flexible and hard to dismantle. The goal was a global insurgency, not a traditional army. Al-Qaeda was built for a long war of attrition, born from the fires of Afghanistan. The network was ready for its next enemy. The world would soon know its name. The Soviet withdrawal in 1989 was a triumph for the Mujahideen and their Arab supporters. Bin Laden returned to Saudi Arabia a hero, but saw victory as a beginning, not an end. In 1990, American troops arrived in Saudi Arabia to defend against Iraq. For Bin Laden, this was a betrayal. Foreign soldiers in Islam's holiest land. He offered his veterans to defend the kingdom, but was rejected in favor of the Americans. The enemy shifted, no longer just the Soviets, but now the United States. Bin Laden preached that the far enemy, America, propped up corrupt regimes in the Muslim world. The jihad became global, offensive, and aimed at striking America anywhere. This was a radical shift from his mentor Azzam's vision of local struggle. With Azzam gone, Bin Laden embraced a more aggressive doctrine. He believed the tactics that bled the Soviets could work against the US. The defensive war was over. The offensive had begun. The mountains' lessons would now be turned against a new superpower. The stage was set for a global conflict. The Afghan victory over the Soviets became a myth. Faith had toppled a superpower. The reality was more complex: US and Saudi support, internal Soviet collapse, but the myth was powerful. For Bin Laden, it proved that belief could defeat might. This story became al-Qaeda's core propaganda. The West was a paper tiger, vulnerable to determined fighters. Bin Laden pointed to US withdrawals from Vietnam and Somalia as proof of American weakness. His strategy: inflict pain, provoke overreaction, and bleed the superpower through endless conflict. Early attacks, the African embassy bombings, the USS Cole, were designed to lure America into war. The ultimate test was 9/11, not to conquer, but to provoke and wound. Bin Laden predicted the US would invade a Muslim country, repeating the Soviet mistake. This would rally a new generation to jihad. The myth of the superpower slayers became a blueprint for endless war. Both al-Qaeda and America would be trapped by this narrative. The consequences would be devastating and long-lasting. The Soviet-Afghan War's legacy is one of unintended consequences. What began as a Cold War proxy became the incubator for global terrorism. Afghanistan's wilderness taught resilience, but also how to wage endless war through ideology. The myth of holy warriors defeating a superpower inspired thousands, fueling new conflicts. Bin Laden turned this myth into a weapon, believing the same tactics could humble America. The result: a cycle of violence, suffering, and endless war. Al-Qaeda's decentralized model proved resilient, outliving its founder and spreading worldwide. The war's lessons, adaptability, unity, and ideological fervor became tools for destruction. The embers of that conflict did not die. They ignited new fires across the globe. Afghanistan's mountains forged a legacy that endures, a warning of how simple narratives can unleash chaos. The world still lives with the consequences, born in the crucible of the Hindu Kush.